We're speaking with Bill Turnbull. He's one of the two candidates for mayor of Kamloops in this upcoming election. Bill, are there any social justice causes you're personally active in or at least interested in?
Well, first off, I've gone to William, my birth name. Since I do take this seriously now, I'm going
William James Turnbull.
Yes, going for the formal. So could you repeat the question, please, Peter?
Are there any social justice causes you're personally active in or at least interested in?
Yes, of course. One that stands out is the homelessness issue. The Lived Experience Committee wishes the term home free to be used now. There's a woman on the corner of 7th and 6th and Seymour, actually, right across from the Crossroads, which is a shelter housing place, and she's been sleeping on the sidewalk now for just days, and she clearly has a mental health issue, and it just makes me want to cry every time I see her. And that, for everyone's sake, she needs to be taken somewhere, like a temporary shelter of some kind, anywhere, and it can be done. And I'm not sure why it's not being done. That's one of the biggest social issues that I've been involved in.
Do you support a living wage for all working people?
Of course. I do like guaranteed income, and that implies that a person isn't necessarily working, because some people are never going to work again. And it does need to be a healthy living guaranteed wage, though. It cannot be a poverty wage.
Food banks first appeared in Canada in the early 80s, and their usage has only increased since then. Why do you think that is?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Probably the same reasons we have them now is the federal, provincial services have been downloaded onto municipalities, and we are forced to look after our citizens, and that's one of the choices we have, is to open up a food bank. They're a temporary solution for a long-term problem. It needs to stop. The provinces need to take back the responsibility. The federal government needs to take back the responsibility. If people had the guaranteed income living wage, we would not need food banks. It's insane. It's actually people with jobs, 2 jobs even, go to the food bank. People that probably need the food bank can't even get there because they're pushing a shopping cart on the other side of town that time, because they're sleeping over on one side of town, having to go on the town for the other side for a meal. It's just insane that there's people being born now that are going to feel that food banks are part of normal society, when it's just insane that they exist even.
What do you think is council's role when faced with epidemics like the fentanyl crisis or the lack of affordable housing?
Well, we've got 2 questions in one there. I think I've already addressed the affordable housing a bit, so we'll go with the fentanyl.
Well, specifically, what is City Council's role, your job as a mayor, to address those type of crises?
The technical answer that a politician can give is it's not technically our mandate. However, it is our problem, and we do need to deal with it directly, and at the same time lobby the province and the federal government for the funds and the authority, if they are going to make it our responsibility as well. That's what's happened with every service. It's been downloaded onto the city without the power, the authority, or the money to deal with it. With the fentanyl crisis, we've got that on naloxone kits, so that's a temporary fix. If people are in houses, that's certainly a start, but then we need we call them the wraparound services, but we need the opioid outreach that'll get people that are on the street and in the homes and have a comfortable environment where they can come. And that's where safe injection sites come in. I think a better word would be comfortable injection sites. We have this misperception. I don't know what exactly the stats are, but I figure it's like 1% of 1% are who a lot of people complain about when it comes to homelessness or drug use. But the rest of the people could be me, could be your neighbor, could be you. We've had high-profile people, at least one, die unfortunately recently. We need the service for everybody. It's not just for that 1% of 1%. the opiate crisis affects everyone. If someone comes down with a sports injury and they get hooked on the opiates through their doctor, there's talk of suing pharmaceutical companies for their complicity in this. There's pieces of the puzzle and there's a big picture.
What do you think is a city councillor's job, or a mayor's job, when faced with controversial development projects like Ajax?
I believe we're allowed to give our opinion, especially when it does affect the citizens of the city. And actually, I have no problem with the city lobbying for its citizens.
What do you think is a reasonable income for a top earner in our society?
I believe the figure that has been thrown out there is around $72,000 a year, which is, I believe, a maximum wage that's been floated out there. It's a weird topic. I don't think many people have even heard of a maximum wage. We've heard of minimum wage, but not a maximum wage, and that's an interesting concept. I think that's worth looking into.
And who do you think should be earning these top incomes? So,
well, that's a good question. That's a tough one, because how do you value work? I mean, in some ways, shouldn't we maybe all have the same wage? I mean, why not, right? I mean, in an ideal society, why not? Really, why not? I mean,
what are your thoughts on the current state of public transit and transportation infrastructure in Kamloops?
I was impressed when I looked the other day. It actually has improved. And I actually am one of the few, if only, candidates besides maybe Donovan that rides the bus, and be at Kostsin. I would like to see 15 minutes on the main artery routes, like 15-minute pickups, sort of like the LRT down in Vancouver, the subway down in Vancouver. So I don't have to look at a schedule. I don't need a phone or an app to know my bus is late or it's going to be on time or whatever. I just need to show up, jump on. It'd be great if they were free even. If we want people to get out of their cars, let's just make it super transit system. And we also need a red eye. We allow drinking. We clearly know people are going to be driving. So we're complicit in that. If you've got a pub, bar, anywhere really, but especially if it's out of town or on the outskirts, the chances someone's going to leave their car there is pretty low. And even if they do, they may not get a taxi. So they're thinking, geez, do I hop in? And even if you hop in and sleep, you can still actually be charged because you're considered in care of your vehicle. So we really do need a red eye, especially in a college university town. We need to look after our kids, because some of them are still actually kids, our younger people, and we need a model for them.
What do you hope Kamloops will look like in 20 years?
I just finished reading the CAM plan, the OCP. It's a huge 225-page document. And it's so huge, my brain went blank. What was the question again?
What do you hope Kamloops will look like in 20 years? And it's funny you mentioned the CAM plan, because one of the criticisms is the CAM plan can have all sorts of ideas, and then when it comes to City Council says, well, it's a great guideline, but we're going to do this other thing anyway.
Right. I mean,
for example, the moving the casino out of downtown and up onto the hill went against the CAM plan idea, which was to increase commercial and density downtown.
Property, when it went with the single family homes rather than density.
Right, on the North Shore recently. Yeah.
And getting back to how it's going to look in 20 years, is they're predicting 30,000 more people. So we're going to have more people. And it made sense. I read the whole thing. It made sense. Is we need to infill. We need to stop expanding. Yes, we still have greenfield areas that are we're allowed to go into. And just like I thought, they do. The CAM plan does say, fill what we have. Let's not go to those greenfield areas until we need to. And we do need to follow the CAM plan. And if we don't, like in terms of the manor property, then we need to amend the CAM plan. It's a bylaw. It needs to be amended. It's the governing bylaw over all bylaws. It says right in there that you cannot deviate from this. And if you do, you need to have a very good reason. And you, from what I could tell, you actually have to amend the CAM plan, or it needs to fit with a lot of the other plans that are underneath it. It's not a. It's just, you're not supposed to be able to just vote. What was it, 8-1 on the manor property, like what happened.
Right.
I would mention councillor names, but my team has told me to stop doing that. Dennis Walsh.
Yes.
Sorry, team.
You supported his position on that.
Of course.
That's what you're saying, yes.
Unfortunately, Dennis is, whether I support Dennis or not with a voter, the guy, he's the only guy I ever see that makes sense on all the issues. Like for a lot of the main ones, he wanted an early agenda, which would be good for the people. I just astounded me that there was no other council members that really jumped on. I mean, there were a few that sort of jumped on later, like Arjun and Capers and Kathy. They seem to sometimes get in there on things, like with the hemp or cannabis public forum. Dennis was the only guy, once again, that totally voted the way things needed to happen. And that was a difficult issue to get a person's head around. And then Kathy came on a bit, and I believe Capers came on a bit, and maybe Arjun, I can't remember exactly. But just the guy, whether, like I said, whether I vote for him or not, the guy is bang on things. So he obviously knows his stuff.
Thank you. Once elected, what will be your top priority? Are there any burning issues you want to see resolved or addressed?
Well, first off, I love your optimism. It's good to hear. Mel Rothenberg gave me a good article and said things very realistically, that I am going up as incumbent. And there's no real controversy. There is quite a difference between my opponent and myself. And one of the main things with governance is that what I would like to see. I'm president of Downtown Neighborhood Association, and I found that, in my view, it's legally, from what I can tell, the government is actually supposed to be run by public and council through the CAO to the staff. What traditionally, back in Millibard days, maybe before that, even now maybe, we've got a mayor CAO staff-run city, and that's up to the council to step up and ask staff to send things back or take things back and redo them. I had a meeting with David Trawan, the CAO of the city, and he was like, I have no problem if the council says bring it back to us revised. So everyone needs to step up and make this city ours. It's just like a union, and a union is only as good as its members.
Great. Thank you.